So the recording has started. Now, does anybody have any questions?
Yes, sir.
Go ahead.
Sir, could you please explain the Smith trigger again?
The Schmidt trigger.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay, so that's actually a pretty important topic, and in fact, it's going to be pretty useful for many things. So let me just. So this is the circuit. This is the name of the circuit which is being mentioned here. And the basic idea behind the Schmidt trigger basically is something like this. You have an op amp, and the op amp by itself, if you don't take special measures, an op amp will usually not work like an amplifier, as we have already seen in the last class, right? Because what is going to happen is that basically the two inputs of the op amp can hardly ever be put so close in voltage to each other that Vt is tiny enough. Remember, for an op amp in the linear region, the output voltage is A times Vd, where A is huge, order of 10,000 or so. And the output voltage essentially is limited to plus Vsat and minus Vsat. By the way, one important point, although we almost always refer to these as plus minus Vsat, in a real op amp, these two are not necessarily negatives of each other. It could be that this is 11.7 volts and this is say minus 11.2 volts. That's always possible. Now there are ways of specially designing op amp circuits so that you get exactly symmetric saturation voltages, but usually that's not necessary. Okay, so we will keep on calling them plus minus Vsat despite the fact that they are really not necessarily negatives of each other. So plus Vsat is basically the positive saturation voltage. Minus Vsat is the negative saturation voltage. They may have slightly different magnitudes in real applications. Okay, but basically what happens is an op amp almost always goes and sits in either plus Vsat or minus Vsat unless we take special measure to design the circuit to ensure Vd is tiny. Okay, in a Schmidt trigger that's not done. So you have two inputs, minus and plus. By the way, if the inputs are not marked as minus and plus, then by convention, the upper one is always minus. Okay, that's the convention. So if you meet an op amp circuit where minus and plus inputs have not been designated, then the upper one by default is minus. And usually in most circuits, markings are done only when you really deviate from this. Okay. Anyway, let's put them in. And then let me just point out that you could make a very simple circuit by just joining this, let's say, some fixed voltage. We have already seen that in the last discussion class as well. Let's say this is V. Okay, we should not call it V0 because it looks very much like VO. So let's call this V reference. And this is Vn. This is not the Schmidt trigger circuit, by the way. This is a simple comparator. It's an inverting comparator. By the way, any op amp circuit must have power supplies connected. And because they must always be there, most circuit diagrams don't show that. That doesn't mean that you can get your op amp circuit to work without the power supply. And by the way, when you say power supply, you mean both the negative and the positive power supply. Both have to be connected. Now, we have already seen in the last class what the output is going to be. Also, the video definitely had a lot of details on this. Here, when Vin is bigger than V reference, VO is going to be how much?
Minus Vsat.
It's going to be minus Vsat, right? Because Vin is being fed to the negative input. So Vin bigger than V reference means Vd is negative. Remember, Vd is always V plus minus V minus. And Vin less than V reference implies VO is plus Vsat. Well, there is a very tiny region around V reference and Vin is just very slightly above or very slightly below. say less than a millivolt above or less than a millivolt below, where VD is of the order of less than a millivolt. And there, of course, this formula, the linear region formula, will actually work. But in practice, that's such a tiny region that we don't bother about this. So this is, of course, an inverting comparator, not the Schmidt-Trigger. To make the Schmidt-Trigger, what you do is you take the output of the circuit and connect it back to the input using a voltage divider. That is two resistances in series. Now, first question, are R1 and R2 really in series? These two resistances, are they in series? Yes? No? What do you say? Are these two things in series?
Strictly speaking, no, but I mean,
Strictly speaking, no.
no,
Right.
but for the circuit, it's there.
Yeah, so strictly speaking, these are not in series because to be in series, you should not have any connection in the middle. Or the test of series really is whatever current goes through this, the same current should go through this. But in practice, or well, for all practical purposes, they are in series simply because what is the difference between these two currents? The current which flows in here. And an op amp takes a negligible amount of current, maybe of the order of a nanoampere or so. So unless R1 and R2, now here there's a bit of a catch here. Suppose somebody put 100 mega ohms for R1 and R2. Let's just say. Or maybe a giga ohm for R1, R2. Somebody put really huge resistances here. Then, of course, the current which will flow through these two resistances will be very, very tiny, of the nanoampere range. And then, of course, you can no longer treat these two in series because the current which is flowing out here or out from this series combination into the op amp is actually of the order of a nanoampere or so. Right? So when you say R1, R2 are practically in series, you would mean that for reasonable circuit connections, if you use R1, R2 as the kilo ohm range, remember VO is of the order of a few volts at most, or usually about 10 volts or 11 volts. This that, right? So if R1, R2 is of the order of kilo ohms, this would be of the order of milliamperes, the current here. So if a nanoampere order current goes away from a milliampere, that's 6 orders of magnitude smaller. So nobody would care. So in usual circuit connections, this can be treated as a series circuit. But at the same time, you have to be aware that if for some reason you use huge resistances here, then you can no longer treat this as a series circuit. Okay, when I say huge, I mean really, really huge. That usually nobody does, so let's not worry too much about that. So we can treat this for all practical purposes as a series. And if we do that, the voltage here is going to be R2 by R1 plus R2 times VO, right? Just simple voltage division. The beauty of op amp circuits is almost all the time, what you need to analyze them are simple formulas from series, parallel, and that kind of stuff. You don't really need much more. Okay. So is this much clear that the voltage here is going to be R2 by R1 plus R2 VO?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so for the sake of definiteness, let's just say R1, R2 are both equal to 1 kilo. Or then this is going to be VO by 2. That's just one example. I'm going to just choose these two resistances equal. If we do that, this voltage is going to be VO by 2. Whatever VO is, output voltage is going to be VO by 2. Now let's start analyzing this circuit by saying, let's say the input voltage. So I'm going to plot the input voltage along the horizontal axis and the output voltage along the vertical axis. Say the input voltage is very large, negative. Let's just say it's say minus 10 volts. So if the input voltage is minus 10 volts, then no matter what VO might have been, it's definitely less than VO by 2, right? Because VO is of the order of plus minus, could be plus, goes from minus 11 volts to plus 11 volts. VO by 2 goes from minus 5.5 to plus 5.5, right? So if Vn is minus 10 volts, it's definitely less than whatever VO by 2 is. Is it okay? Right?
Yes, sir.
Did that make sense? So what will VT be? Negative or positive? If Vn is minus 10 volts, let's say, VD, positive or negative? I don't need to know how much it is. I just need to know whether it's positive or negative. What can VO by 2 be? At most, it can be 5.5 volts. At least, it can be minus 5.5 volts. When Vn is minus 10 volts, is V minus more than or less than V plus? So I just need to know, is it greater than 0 or less than 0? Yes? That shouldn't be too difficult a
It will
question.
be positive.
Yeah, the point is V plus can be, even if it's very low, it can be minus 5.5 volts, right? Can't go below that. Minus 10 is definitely below that. So VD is definitely positive. So if VD is positive, what should the output be?
Positive.
Not just positive, it should be plus
Yes,
VSAT, right?
positive.
Yeah, plus VSAT. So let's say 11 volts. So this is the situation. When input is minus 10, output is plus 10 volts. Now you keep on increasing the input, say minus. So now notice this is plus 11 volts. What's the voltage here? $5.5, right? Half of that, I'm using R1, R2 equal, right? Is it okay?
Yes, sir.
So this is like a comparator circuit once again, an inverting comparator, just like the one we drew a while ago, before we connected this R1, R2, with 5.5 volts as a reference, right? So as you keep on increasing the input voltage, the output will stay at plus VSAT until you reach what? Until you reach 5.5 volts, which is the reference voltage here. So when the input voltage crosses 5.5 volts, what will happen to the output?
It will be negative feedback.
Once the input voltage crosses 5.5 volts, the output becomes,
Negative feedback.
yeah, because the VD now becomes negative. Remember, Vin is V minus. So when Vin goes beyond the voltage at V plus, you are going to go to negative VSAT. So you are going to switch. And then if you keep on increasing the voltage, the output stays, the input voltage, the output stays minus VSAT. Okay. So what is behaves exactly like an inverting comparator whose reference voltage is 5.5 volts. When Vin is less than 5.5 volts, output is positive. And when Vin is more than 5.5 volts, output is negative. But now the question is, if I now start decreasing the input voltage and coming back, what will happen? If this were a comparator, then when you cross 5.5 volts, the output will go back to positive, right? Clear? If this were a comparator really. But now what is the output voltage at this stage? When Vin is more, has crossed 5.5 volts, you all said, not all, some of you said, that the output is minus 11 volts, right? Is it okay?
Yes, sir.
And then what is the voltage here? That is how much is V plus now?
Minus 5.5.
It's minus 5.5 volts. But now you see, it is a comparator once again, but it's not comparing with 5.5. It's comparing with minus 5.5. So when the input drops below 5.5 volts, the output doesn't go back to plus VSAT. right? Suppose the input is 1 volts. V plus is minus 5.5. And now V minus is 1 volt and V plus is minus 5.5. So the output, so the VD is still negative and the output will stay negative. How long will it stay negative? As you keep on decreasing? What will happen? Until you reach minus 5.5 volts, the output will stay negative. And only then will it transit up and go to plus 5.5. Is it okay? The point is, this is like a comparator, but the voltage it compares with, that depends on the output voltage because it's basically a fraction of the output voltage, R2 by R1 plus R3 dVO. Okay? Is that okay?
Yes, sir.
So depending on what the output is, the behavior changes. Does that make sense? Any confusion about this? For a comparator, the behavior is simple. It just checks whether V minus is more than V plus or not. The only thing is, in this case, V plus changes depending on the value of VO. When VO is positive, V plus is positive. When VO is negative, V plus is negative. That's all there is to it. So the comparison voltage changes. But now, the question is, suppose the input is plus 1 volt. What will the output be? Plus Vsat or minus Vsat? Okay, I deliberately started with a Vin of minus 10 volts. Can you see why? Not the minus 10, but I started with a large negative voltage to begin with when I started discussing this. Can you see why I did that? I could have also started with a large positive voltage. Yeah, tell me.
To get VD positive.
Well, to get VD positive is right, but importantly to get a definite sign of VD. When the input is large negative, so large that is definitely below my even the smallest possible value for V plus, then VD is guaranteed to be positive. So we started with a definite positive voltage. And then when we could have also started with a large positive voltage for VN, then VD would have started out negative. We would have been sure. But now my question is, when Vin is 1 volt, what is the output? Plus Vsat or minus Vsat? The 1 volt is somewhere here. What's the output? By the way, this point is called the UTP, or the voltage is called VUTP. And this point is called VLTP. And U and L are just upper and lower, and TP stands for trip point, where the voltage shifts or changes from one value suddenly to another value. Okay. So if we started above VUTP, I'm definitely sure that the output is going to be minus Vsat. If I start below VLTP, I'm sure the output is going to be plus Vsat. When I'm somewhere in between the two trip points, like say at 1 volt, what will the output be? So this is very important. So when I say between the two chip points, I mean for input voltage between the two chip points, the output is what? Come on, give me an answer. Which one will it be? Plus Vsat or minus Vsat?
Plus Vsat.
Hmm?
plus reset. If you are coming from like large negative sides, large negative voltages.
Okay, you're right in the sense the question actually is ill placed. You cannot say output is. So it depends on how you reach that voltage. Did you come from large negative value or large positive value? Okay. So basically, when you are between the two trip points, the output can have one of two values, any one of the two, depending on the history of the input. So output depending on the history of the input. What is this thing called? This phenomenon where the output depends on how the input was reached, not just on the input.
Hysteresis.
Feedback.
No. It's something much more familiar. And if you read this sentence, you should be able to tell me what that phenomenon is called. The root of the word is in this sentence.
Sir, hysteresis, no?
I think you said the right thing, but I couldn't hear it clearly.
Hysteresis.
Yeah, it is hysteresis. Hysteresis simply means history dependence. So you have seen hysteresis in magnetic systems, where whether you get a magnetization which is positive or negative depends on whether you put in a large positive magnetic field before or after. But this is essentially hysteresis in an electrolytic circuit. The output depends on not just the input, it's not a function of the input. Because remember, a function can return only one value for one input. This is not a function. The output depends not only on the voltage, but on the history of the voltage. Okay. So in a sense, it's a functional. It depends on the function which the input is of type, not just what the value of the input is. Okay. Now, what good is this? This circuit. Okay, now that we understand that this is not just an ordinary comparator circuit, we could ask, why should we want to bother about this at all? Now, there are several reasons why one bothers about it. For example, suppose what you could do is, instead of using, say, this same circuit, instead of using R1, R2 equal to 1 kilo ohm, what you could do is something like this. I could use, say, R1 equal to 100K, R2 equal to, say, 100 ohms. So what will that make VO? Plus or minus a small value, right? 100 ohms by 100K plus 100 ohms is nearly 100K. So the geometry is almost 100K. So R2 by R1 is basically an ohm by a kilo ohm. So one in 1000, right? So this ratio is almost 1 by 1000. So this becomes essentially a small value. Say maybe 10 volts becomes 10 millivolts here. Plus 10 millivolts or minus 10 millivolts. Plus 11 or minus 11 millivolts. Let's say. Okay. So then, of course, what happens if you going to plot your input versus output? This hysteresis window will not be this fat or wide. It will simply be a tiny window like this. Okay. In fact, not even this thick, because the scale would have to be widely changed. Somewhere between within a few millivolts, you will have this hysteresis. Now, in such a circuit, the advantage, so this is almost like a right? So if you had a comparator, say zero crossing detector, then what happens? Comparator which compares with zero, you have only one place where it trips, which is at zero. Input less than zero, output positive, input more zero, output negative. Here what we have is a very thin, narrow region like this. In between the input depends on the history. Now, why would I want something like this? The answer is this. one problem with a comparator which is a strict comparator, like one which jumps whenever the input crosses zero, is that it also is very sensitive to out external noise. Suppose the input were really tiny, let's say minus 5 millivolts. Okay. And then suddenly a fluctuation happened which drove it to a positive value and then suddenly brought it back. Say a small fluctuation, somewhere around plus minus 6 millivolts or so. And when it was plus 6 millivolts, it just jumped and crossed positive value. Crossed over to positive value. Then the output would suddenly jump from plus 10 to minus 10. And when that noise went away, it would go back to minus 10 again. Okay. So that would mean that this circuit, especially for inputs very close to the trip point or the comparator, would actually be very sensitive to external noise. External noise could make the output fluctuate wildly. Now, here on the other hand, what's happening is you have a minus 11 millivolt to plus 11 millivolt window. So if you are somewhere here and suppose a small noise came in, you would cross over, but you would, if the noise is really small, you would not cross the 11 millivolt threshold. So what that would mean is because you're coming from this side where the output is positive, the output will stay positive. Small noises which stay for some time and go away will not change the output from positive to negative. So this makes the circuit immune to small fluctuations when the input is close to the trip point. So this could be an improved version of the comparator which handles noise better, which will not trigger, which will be triggered only when the input substantially changes, not when some small fluctuation occurs. And that actually is very, very important. There are many situations where you want to protect your circuit from small fluctuations. A Schmitt trigger might very well be one of the ways to do that. Similarly, if the input is somewhere here and you have a small negative fluctuation, chances are that the fluctuation may make you cross the zero and may not be large enough to cross over to minus 11 millivolts. Of course, if the fluctuation is large enough, it will drive the output back from negative VSAT to plus VSAT. But as long as the fluctuation is not too big, even if you cross the zero, it will keep the output the same as whatever it was before. So the history dependence of the Schmitt trigger really comes in handy here. So that's one application of the Schmitt trigger. There are many, many more. So I discussed this in the video, but this is an important enough circuit so that we should really talk about it again. So this one is a poor man's square wave generator. Okay, it's really not a poor man's generator. It's a pretty good generator. It's just that it takes very little to build up. So here, what you do is this. I'm going to connect the output back to the positive input via this resistance network. So this part, of course, is the Schmitt trigger connection. I'm also going to connect a resistance here. So back to the negative input. Now I'm going to put a capacitor in. So this is just a Schmitt trigger with an additional RC network joining the output back to the input via the negative input. Back to the ground via the negative input. Okay. So this is just a small modification. Even we did discuss this one in the video, but let's talk about this once again because this also needs some understanding. So suppose I just switch on the circuit and let's just say VO is positive. So VO can be either plus VSAT or minus VSAT. So let's say VO is plus VSAT now. When I just switch on the circuit, let's say the capacitor now is uncharged. So what will happen to the capacitor? Note that as far as the capacitor is concerned, again, this RC, is this a series RC network? Is this series RNC? Yes?
Yes, for practical purpose.
Again, for practical purposes, the RC network is a series network, right? Unless, of course, again, somebody uses a huge R for whatever reason. As long as R is of the order of kilo ohm, the current here will be milliampere range, and the current flowing into the op amp that is out of the series would be nanoampere range, so we can easily ignore that. So, if you have a series RC network with an uncharged capacitor connected to a plus VSAT, so this end is at plus VSAT, remember? Okay. So, what will happen to the capacitor? So, I'm plotting time here. So, this is different from the previous graph. In the previous graph, we had V in versus VO. Here we have time versus voltage, and there are two voltages I'm going to plot. One is the capacitor voltage, which is also V minus, by the way. Whatever voltage drop appears across capacitor is V minus. So initially the capacitor voltage, of course, is 0. Then what happens? Forget all this paraphernalia. You have a plus VSAT connected to a resistance and a capacitor in series. Then what happens to the capacitor? Come on. That should be.
It starts charging.
It charges up, right? And if it charges up, the voltage across the capacitor increases. And if you had nothing else in the circuit, just a plus VSAT R and C, the capacitor would have charged up towards VSAT, right? So that it would have essentially behaved like this. So that ultimately, after a long time, it would have reached plus VSAT. That is what would have happened if there were nothing else in the circuit, just the capacitor, and the resistance and the voltage source, right? However, note that this is part of a Schmidt-Trigger circuit, right? So when Vin increases, what happens? When there is not Vin, no, this is now there are no inputs actually. But these are still V minus and V plus. V plus, of course, is R2 by R1 plus R2 times VO. Again, almost for all practical purposes, R1, R2 are in series. So V plus is going to be given by that expression. And V minus, essentially the capacitor voltage, which is charging up. So this thing will continue until V minus crosses V plus. So this is really not going to happen like this. It's not going to go and charge up to plus VSAT. Once V minus crosses V plus at this value, V plus is of course less than VO. So less than VSAT. So at some voltage, when V minus just crosses V plus, what will happen? This part will no longer be there. But when V minus crosses V plus, how much is VO?
Minus VSAT.
VO switches to minus VSAT, right? That means this trip point becomes negative. But now, notice that the capacitor voltage is up here, but it's now in the RC circuit combination where the input is minus VSAT. So what will happen to the capacitor after this?
It will discharge.
It will discharge. Well, actually, it will discharge towards a negative voltage, towards minus VSAT, right? So it would try to discharge like this, all the way down to minus VSAT. But will it be able to go all the way down to minus VSAT?
No.
No, because the moment V minus just reaches this value, which is now the lower trip point, remember once you cross the lower trip point, the output goes of a Schmidt-Trigger goes back to plus VSAT. So this discharge will continue up to this. After that, the output will switch back to V plus and the capacitor will start charging up again. And then it will start discharging again. So periodically it will start charging and discharging, charging and discharging, and this is how it's going to go on. And the output, VO, will be plus Vsat here. Then it will jump to minus Vsat. Then again it will jump to plus Vsat, then minus Vsat. So the output is going to be a square wave. Plus Vsat, minus Vsat, plus Vsat, minus Vsat, and so on. Is this clear? Come on, I need a response. Did you not understand this or not? Hold
Yes,
on, I
sir.
need to take this call. Just hold on. Okay, so I'm back. So yeah, so what was I asking at that just before this? I was asking whether you understood this, right? This plus Vsat minus Vsat switching of the output. In fact, this circuit actually can give you two kinds of outputs. It can give you a square wave if you take the output from VO, and if you take the output from here, just across the capacitor, you would actually get something which is like a triangular wave, although it's not really. These are actually parts of exponential curves. But for most purposes, they are good enough as triangular, almost straight lines. So you get a square wave output, you and also get a sort of slightly distorted triangular output out of the same circuit. So important question, what does the time period depend upon? Which of these circuit parameters control the time period?
RC.
RMC.
RC is right, but that's not the complete answer. RMC will definitely affect the, so bigger the RC, slower the charging, bigger the time constant of the RC circuit, so bigger the time period. That's easy. That was easy. But apart from that,
R1 and R2 as they determine the tripping points.
yeah, R1 and R2 determine the voltage at which it is going to trip. So, of course, if you make R2 bigger, so suppose you keep R1 the same, make R2 bigger, do you expect the time period to go up or go down?
Goes up.
Why?
Then V plus will be greater.
What will be greater?
V plus.
Well, V plus meaning not just greater, it will become actually greater when it's positive, smaller when it's negative. So it's actually the gap between the two checkpoints become larger. And of course, that means it's going to get to charge more and also discharge more. Of course, that will take more time. Okay, so R1, well, actually the R2 by R1 ratio really, and the RC value. These control the time period. Okay, but one question, apart from the very first cycle, which is always atypical, after this, the capacitor charge, it has charged up to plus the VUTP, right? It charges up to plus VUTP and charges down to VLTP, and then charges up to VUTP again. Then goes down to VLTP again. So two voltages. Well, the important question is, will it charge for a longer time or discharge for a longer time? In other words, will the output be positive at plus VSAT longer or minus VSAT longer? Forget the first part of the cycle. That's always atypical. After that, will the output be positive and negative for different amounts of time, or will they be positive and negative for the same amount of time? What will happen? Remember, the output is negative as long as the capacitor is discharging, that is, as long as it goes from plus VUTP to VLTP. Then when it charges up, the output is positive, and the capacitor goes from VLTP to VUTP. So are these two times equal or different?
They should be equal.
They should be
Equal.
They should be equal, right? So this is that's pretty easy to see actually. You're charging from one value which is, so basically it's a pretty easy case of using the capacitor charging formula to see that this is going to be definitely equal. So this is an example of something which is called a 50% duty cycle square wave. The duty cycle essentially tells you what percentage of the total time period is the output positive. Here the output is positive for half of the time cycle of the time period and negative for the other half. So this is a 50% duty cycle square wave. Can you think of a way of modifying the circuit so that it becomes something other than 50%? Suppose I want a 30% duty cycle square wave. So I want it to charge up in a smaller time, charge up faster, and discharge more slowly. Can you think of a way to do that?
By changing the saturation point. I mean, saturation voltage. By changing
Sorry, could you just be a bit louder? I'm having some difficulty understanding what you're saying.
By changing the
Or
saturation.
slower, that would help.
We can do that by changing the saturation voltages.
Now, how can you change the saturation voltage?
I mean, if the power sources are like not symmetric.
If the power source is asymmetric, right? That's one possibility. But that's usually a bad idea in an op-amp. Think of the RC. Think of changing here. Can you do something here in this part which will make the charging faster than the discharging? Okay, what if I did this? What if I put another resistance in parallel? Will this help? Yes or no? Would this help? With putting a R prime? Hmm? Yes? Come on, you should be able to guess whether it will help or not. If I put an R prime in parallel to R, will that actually help? I'm not. Nobody has messaged anything, thankfully. So, what will this do? If I put R prime in parallel with R, will it change the time period? Yes or no? What is the duty cycle? First, will it change the time period?
No.
What does
It
the
will not
time period depend upon?
on RC and R1 and R2.
If you put R prime in parallel with R, will that change the RC?
By a bit.
You mean bit? Why a bit?
I mean,
Depends on how big R prime is. Suppose R prime is equal to R, it will halve the RC.
yes.
Come on, you're giving more paths to flow for the current to flow, right? Resistance goes down. If R prime is very huge compared to R, of course, it's only going to change the time, change RC by a bit. But if R prime is comparable to R, it's going to change the RC a lot. It's going to decrease the RC, make the time period smaller, right? But will it change the duty cycle?
No, it will not.
So in order to change the duty cycle, you have to try one thing. Can you think of a way in which R prime will be in parallel to R when the output is positive, that is the capacitor is charging up, so that the time constant is smaller, and R prime is not in parallel to R, that is R prime is not even in the circuit, when the output is negative. If you could do that, so if you could make R prime come in parallel with R on one part of the time period and drop out from the circuit in the other part, then this can be achieved, right?
By using a diode.
Yeah. So the easy way to do that would be simply ensure that the circuit, that the op amp is in the circuit for part of, sorry, not the op amp, the R prime is in the circuit for part of the time, not in the circuit for the other part. And the way to do that is just put a diode here. Then what will happen? When VO is positive, the diode is forward biased. R prime and R both are in the circuit, they are parallel. That decreases the time constant. The capacitor charges up fast. On the other hand, in other words, when it's charging up, it has both R and R prime to get the current through. Two paths, more current, so faster charging. And when VO is negative, that is when the output is switched, the diode will be reverse biased. And because the diode will be reverse biased, when the diode will be reverse biased, the diode will cut off the R prime from the circuit, and you will only have R to carry the current. So the time constant is larger in one half of the cycle, smaller in the other half. That's it. So that will give you a duty cycle which is less than 50%. Charging will be faster, so the output will be positive for smaller amount of time. How could you make the duty cycle more than 50%? Yes?
By changing the direction of the diode.
Yeah, all you have to do is reverse the diode. If the diode is actually placed like this, then R prime is parallel to R when the output is negative. Otherwise, it's not in the circuit. So that will help you to get a asymmetric more than 50% duty cycle square wave. By the way, this circuit has a rather fancy name, which we will meet later on as well. This is called an astable multivibrator. Well, the name simply means a multivibrator is a circuit which has multiple possible outputs. In this case, plus VSAT, minus VSAT, two possible outputs. That's a multi in the multivibrator. And it's called astable multivibrator simply because neither of the two outputs are stable. You get plus VSAT for some time, then you switch to minus VSAT, then you get plus VSAT for some time, then you switch to minus VSAT. So you will see later that there are other kinds of multivibrators possible, which may be, say, it could be one of the outputs is stable. So if you switch it to the other output, it will go there for some time and come back to the original one and stay there. So that's a different circuit. This one is astable. Neither of the two outputs are stable. They don't stay fixed, which is good because that's precisely why you get a square wave output. Okay. So anything else? Any other questions? Okay, if there are no other questions, I'm going to call it a day today. And we will meet again on Thursday. And I did say that I'm going to discuss JFET today, but I didn't have time. So on Thursday, we'll talk about the JFET amplifier circuits. Okay, so anybody has any questions? Now would be the good time to ask. Nobody seems to have a question. Okay. Okay, then bye for today. We will meet again on Thursday. And okay, I'm sorry that I couldn't actually upload the problem sheets by now because of some other engagement that I had. I will try to do that as soon as possible.